Now for the product manager, after they understand the customer, it's all about developing a set of requirements for engineering to build the right product. When it comes to developing requirements, there's a lot of different ways you can collect requirements. The most typical in the industry for the longest time was requirements documents, these 30-page documents that specify what algorithms are going to be, what does it look like. You might also get something that's fairly more simplistic, collecting feature requirements on post-it notes or spreadsheets. In some organizations where they're just so loosey-goosey, these requirements might just sit in the CEO's head or maybe sit in the collective heads of the team. Right? But the one that's really taken hold in the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years is, in terms of capturing requirements, is user stories. And here's the thing about user stories. It's a really simple way of describing requirements in just everyday language. And here's the template for a user story. As a role, I want this particular goal or desire so I can get this benefit. And I'll run through some examples for you. So one example could be, as an administrator or secretary, I want to be able to add, delete, or change my boss's schedule so that I don't have to use his password. Or another example, as a Facebook user, I want to see out-of-town friends who send status messages in my hometown first so that I can send them a note. Now here's what's really unique about this user story. First of all, it doesn't describe how the solution works, okay? And engineers love that because, gosh, engineers, just like everyone else, they don't like to be told what to do. By just stating the problem that needs to be solved, you're still empowering the engineers with their own creative license to come up with the ideal solution. And then the next thing that's really great about these user stories is that it's concise. It's not a 30-page document, so you're not only saving time to write it, but you're also helping the team save time by reading something that's a little bit more to the point. Now, once you get all these user stories and collected in a central collection place, you're going to have some challenges. As a PM, we call this managing the product backlog. So the backlog is a collection of user stories. Within the user stories, you might see some duplicates. You might see some user stories where you might not understand what's going on. So you'll spend a lot of time trying to clarify. And then finally, once you've got that cleaned up, you want to prioritize the top user stories that you want the engineers to work on next. Now, there's a lot of different ways to prioritize. Maybe the CEO dictates what gets done. Maybe it's the VP of engineering, or maybe it's the product manager. On the other end of the continuum, something that's a little less arbitrary would be to do a full-blown ROI analysis. If some of you guys are from business schools, you can pop out Excel and do your expected impact in terms of a revenue upside or cost savings for a particular feature. But usually it's somewhere in between, and that in-between state is what I'm showing here in the table, which is really a list weighted by different priorities. So we call this a prioritization matrix, and on the left-hand side we have different stories, and we just call them story A, B, and C. And for each one of those stories, we'll look at different characteristics or criteria. We're considering the revenue impact, the customer satisfaction, and the implementation difficulty. And we take a weighted sum or weighted multiple of these three different elements to get an overall priority. After that gets prioritized, engineers are giving marching orders, and these days, especially with a lean development movement, engineering sprints happen in about a 2-week interval. At the end of 2 weeks, there's usually a demo day where the engineers showcase the great things that they've done with a particular user story, and then if it meets the acceptance criteria, it gets launched. And that's the next stage for the product manager, is to serve as the launch owner. What does launch owner mean? Well, there's a couple of key responsibilities as the launch owner. First of all, you're responsible for project execution. It's about facilitating communication between the different team members. The team members can be very large, and it can also be very diverse. We could have engineers, we could have designers. As you get closer to launch, you'll have marketing, legal, operations, executives. You also serve as the primary executive contact. A lot of executives are going to be very, very curious about where the product lies in terms of ship dates. And you, as a product manager, you're usually the single throat to choke. You're the first person they're going to go and get some answers. The next thing is that you'll be the primary product contact. Anytime there's a need for a customer demo, the product manager is usually the first person they call. If there's any sort of customer issue with the product, they'll call up the product manager. Or if there's any new requirements or feature requests, those will go to the product manager as well. And then lastly, when it comes to dealing with the press, your PR team might reach out to TechCrunch, to the Wall Street Journal, and they'll want to talk to somebody who's a product expert. And because product managers are known to be very close and intimate with the product details, perhaps some of the technical elements too, as well as great communication skills, the product manager is usually the point person and the external representative for a particular product or feature. Some of your key documents as a product manager at this stage is the product FAQ. It's usually a short document, 2 to 3 pages, where it describes what it is that's being launched, who is it for, how does it work, why would anybody want it, and when is it launching in which regions. Okay. The last stage of the typical PM's responsibility is once the product's been launched, evaluating customer feedback. There's a lot of different ways you can get feedback about a newly launched product. You can get feedback from the sales team, you can get feedback from customer support, you can get feedback from social media, what people are saying about the product, from surveys. But the thing that's really popular now amongst mobile and Web 2.0 circles is A/B testing. And it's because now that we've got applications that are tied into this client-server model, you can serve up different types of experiences to different segments of your customer population. And so the whole idea here is that the primary experience, that's the A experience. But let's say you wanted to try a new feature, a new color, a new button. You want to serve that as a B experience to a small segment of your overall audience, maybe 5%, 10%. And you want to collect some data to see when those people who are on the B experience, how does their behavior change in relation to goals that are important for your organization? I've got an example for you right here. And let's say this is A/B test data for a social network. They're trying to evaluate changing the upload photo stage from after the sign-up flow to during the sign-up flow. And you can see here in the second column that there are different measures that they're evaluating. They're like, okay, if we move this up into the sign-up flow, we want to see engagement increase. And you see a lot of positive things here. For example, the number of users that are posting to the social network, that's going up by 2%. Or the number of posts total is going up by almost 5%. Or the number of invites sent to their friends to join the social network, that's going up by 2%. There's a lot of positive things about this feature that's leading to improved engagement. But as is typical for a lot of new features, it's never always win-win. In fact, it can often be like win-lose. And there's some trade-offs you have to consider. In this particular feature, while the engagement has improved modestly, on the downside, the number of users completing sign-up has gone down by 13%. And so at that point, the product manager, and one of your key competencies as a product manager is ability to make decisions, is given this conflicting situation, what should you do? Should you keep the new feature that has great engagement, or should you revert to the previous feature that doesn't damage sign-up as much? Okay. This column over here on the far right, the p-value, for those of you who have taken statistics, you're familiar with what p-value is all about. It's a measure of whether or not the data that we're looking at, is that statistically significant, or is that possibly just random chance? And as long as the p-value is lower than 0.05, that usually signifies that, hey, you've got a credible signal to base some decisions off of.